Hey everybody, welcome to the Hana podcast. It's me, Willie Paul. I'm sitting down with Pastor Elwin.
How's it? Good to see you
Pastor Elwin, is
guys.
it true you don't dye your hair?
I don't dye my hair. You want to look? Take a look.
Yeah. Okay, I can see maybe a few gray hairs here and there. You just got the
Yeah,
good
it's
genes or something?
it's there. I think Joyce says when you're in the sunlight, you can see it kind of sparkle out. But yeah,
Uh,
that's cool.
is there a
I'm good.
secret? Do you like wash your hair with a certain type of shampoo or?
I just have to be careful because we talk about bachi, yeah, local
Oh
style.
yeah.
If I keep teasing people about it, I'm afraid one day I'm gonna wake up, either I'm gonna be all bald or there's gonna be patches, or it's gonna be all gray, or yeah. So I just got to be careful. But it's not dyed. You can see it in my sideburns. I used to kind of like pull out the one gray here and there,
Mm,
but then it looks a little more wise, yeah, more
yeah, I think
wisdom.
you could. I think you could really rock the like salt and pepper hair.
Let's see. Let's see.
Yeah, I think you could really pull it off. But anyway,
I'm not in
uh,
a rush. Yeah.
yeah, no rush. You got time. Um, hey, I really love the message this past week
Oh, good.
about shattered expectations, Palm Sunday. Um, I thought it was really well done, especially talking about just all the expectations surrounding Jesus and who people thought he was going to be.
Yeah.
Because there was this expectation of the warrior king, of Jesus coming down to like kick out the Romans and set up the 12 tribes of Judah and everything, and like to
Yeah.
have that shattered expectation of not a warrior king but a humble servant.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. And I think one area
yeah.
that I touched upon, but really, if you want to drill down a little bit more about it, just the image of who he was and how that came about. Yeah, because we talked about
Mm-hmm.
him being a king, the warrior, omnipotent, as I was saying in there. But based on people's expectations because of what they were living through, what their experience, the wars that they had to fight, the
Mm-hmm.
military, the context, yeah, really developed the image of who they expected of him to be,
Mm-hmm.
and how we do the same thing with ourselves. Yeah, we shape God by our own expectations. So
Yeah, that part really reminded me of I think it was Tozer who said what we think about God is the most important thing about us. And he was talking about how like if we think that God is like distant and angry and judgmental, then that's like who we will become. But if we can think of God as who he really is, which is like compassionate, forgiving,
yeah,
loving, a servant, then like that's who we become.
yeah,
So I thought that was really cool that you brought about that expectation, not just of like your own life, but expectations of who you think God is.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah,
yeah, uh, I thought it was just an awesome. It melded together very well the historical biblical context with the real life application of what it means for us today.
yeah, yeah.
So I was listening to it. I didn't get a chance to listen to it on Sunday because we were doing the Metro Kids Easter egg drop off, and then I was doing the Metro Kids online. So I was running around. I didn't get a chance to listen to it, but I listened to it on the podcast on Monday, and I was driving. I was
Oh,
just like, "Oh, this is so
oh,
good."
you mean you missed Sunday? We say this, and we minister to the online audience,
Mm-hmm.
and we record that. But man, in person, something else happens. I don't know what happens when you're in
Yeah,
house with people there. There are a little more twists and turns on that one too on Sunday. So, shucks, I wish somehow we can capture that. But anyway, I think that the basic message was still
yeah,
very
and
meaningful.
I really appreciate the ability to have like podcasts or online services, because there's sometimes where like you're busy, you can't make it to church, and so
Yeah.
you're able to get it. And then like even I was listening to the podcast, and like you said something, and I was driving, so I wasn't like I was paying attention to the road because I'm a safe driver. I'm
Yeah.
smart, I'm wise, I'm an adult. I wasn't touching my phone. And you said something, and I realized like, oh, I missed the last like couple sentences he said, so I can just
uh,
rewind and I just listen to it again.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
like you can't in the middle of service, you can't just be like, sorry, could you just go back?
Yeah. Well, here's a
uh,
couple of things that I did mention on Sunday, and um, I'll be careful because, like, again, like I said, bachi, I don't want it happening to
Yeah.
me. But so when I was talking about, you know, your expectations will oftentimes shape what you experience later on,
Hmm.
and don't allow your unmet expectations to distract you from the greater thing that God has for your life. And I talked about worship, yeah, a little bit about worship. Um, on Sunday, I said, I remember, I was helping Pastor Wayne, yeah, preach and teach,
Hmm.
but he would be the main speaker, and everybody loved him, and everybody loved how he communicated and his jokes and all that. And I remember walking out on stage one weekend when he was gone. He told me to fill in for him, so I walked out on stage after worship and dance and all. And I remember in this row, three ladies stood up and they walked out, just like that,
Oh
just like
no.
that. So and so I said to the church on Sunday, I said, so when Brandon comes out, don't leave, just stay, all right? Because we have this image of wanting, and we know that we have this great church, and the pastor is going to be dynamic and he's going to give this message, and you guys get yourselves ready and you come to church, and then Brandon comes up on stage. I said that
Yeah.
too, and but all those things. And there was another one that happened to me where I gave a message, and at New Hope, you walk off. There's multiple services, so I walked off stage to get ready for the next one, and this big guy came backstage. I don't know how he got backstage, but bigger than me. And he said, Pastor, I've been coming to the church for years, and I would call every week to see who's speaking. And if it wasn't Pastor Wayne, I wasn't going to come. And this weekend, when you walked out on stage, I said, and he said a word that I couldn't repeat in church. He gave this expletive, and he said, I forgot to call. And it was you. Yeah. He says, it was you. And I'm thinking, oh man, did I put this guy in prison? What did I do to this guy? And he said, but after you started speaking and I listened to the message, now I know I don't have to call anymore. I thought, okay,
Ooh.
thank you very much.
Yeah.
But I said, sometimes we have this expectation and we think, that's not what I wanted. Or even during worship, that's not the song that I know.
Mm-hmm.
And we tune out and we miss exactly what God wanted for us.
Yeah.
So
there's so many biblical stories where you can kind of make that parallel where people were expecting something else from Jesus. I'm thinking of like the rich young ruler who like came up to Jesus and said, "Hey, I followed everything. Like, what do I got to do?" And you can kind of infer that he was expecting Jesus to be like, "Oh, you're good. Like, you made it. You're the perfect example." But then Jesus called him out and it's like, well, sell everything and follow me. And he like walked away. So he missed the entire blessing of like being able to follow Jesus, just because like that's not what he wanted.
Yeah. I think of Moses. So he's fully obedient to God, right? Didn't want to lead the people. God said, no, you're going to do it. God got even angry with him, gave him Aaron. And so they did. They led the people out. They got him out of Pharaoh's, strong, his grip. And then they provided water for him. And then remember that at the rock, and the Lord said, speak to the rock and water will come out. And yet Moses struck the rock.
Yeah.
And water came out, fed the people. But the Lord said, because you didn't do what I asked you to do, you're not going to get into the promised land. Think of Moses, unmet expectation. Blew it. But he could have rebelled against God. He could have said, well, forget that, God. I've been doing all of this for you, and yet you keep me out of the promised land. I mean, it could have been a whole different scene. But he trusted. And then you fast forward, Mount of Transfiguration, who appears, when Jesus was praying? Moses.
Yeah,
and Elijah.
He was there with him.
So Moses, he made it. Eventually he made it. But he had to just trust that even though he didn't get to go where he thought he was going to go, that God still had a plan for him, But, so that's another one.
Yeah, and I did want to ask you about that because, well, not about Moses and the Transfiguration, but about that turn from disappointment and disillusionment from your unmet expectations like how do you turn that into trusting in Jesus again? Because it can be difficult of like, wait, I didn't get what I thought I was going to get, like I'm out. But how do you make that turn?
Yeah. I think that's an individual kind of a contextual kind of question, um, because some won't wait around. Some will have a desire to just, okay, well, I'm just going to do it anyway. And I think a general answer would be, well, up to you, because you're going to either learn by being patient and waiting, or you're going to learn by the results of it later on. Whether it be in a marriage setting. Yeah, I've waited, I've tried, I've went to counseling, I did all this, it ain't going to work. I'm divorcing the person. And then you see what happens after that, where the ramifications of it, there's always a negative side of it. Or there are those who say, okay, I tried this, it didn't work. I'm going to trust God, I'm going to stay with it. And then you see somehow, again, it's very contextual, so you can't give a specific answer. But you see, and there are examples of some where the marriage comes back together again. And now they're just rejoicing in that. And what would have happened if they had gone and left and all that. So, yeah, I think it's an individual thing. Trust is hard, and yet it shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's easier said than done, I think.
Well, relating to what is your image of God, right? It goes back to that question. How are you shaping the image of your God? Is it based on your expectations that haven't been met, or are you trusting that, okay, God is God, He's given me His word, His promises, I'm going to trust in that. So it's just how you're shaping your God.
I really like the things that you've said a couple times in like staff meetings and things, and a couple times in messages, I think, but you always say that God is transformational and not transactional. Yeah. And I think that so often we, especially like in American culture, we see God as being a transaction, like a businessman in the sky, where it's like, all right, God, if I pass this test, like if I get an A on my math test, then I'll read my Bible. Or like, okay, God, if I'm going to stop swearing or something, or I'm going to give this up. And then because I'm doing this, then like it basically legally binding. Now you have to do this. But that's not really like operational how that works.
Yeah, if I work for this company for all these years, then my company owes me, or I'm entitled to, and then you look at Love's Bakery closing, so how did that happen? I gave my life to this company, and I've been obedient to you, God. I've been going to church every Sunday, and I've been reading my Bible. So God, how could you let this happen? So that's a transactional image of God. We do this and expect something in return. And God has much bigger plan than that.
How would you suggest someone change their perspective of transactional? God, if I do this, then you do this. How do you suggest that someone could change that image that they have of God?
Sometimes there's some where something happens in their life and there's a radical transformation that happens. I think for me, my life reflects almost a radical transformation. Because I was really not a good guy. And I went through what I had to go through. And I think sometimes God will allow me to go through that because I had to. I'm the type of guy that I got to fall flat on my face before I go, oh, okay, there is another way, Some others, it takes time. Some others, the longer they spent in this mindset, the longer it's going to take for them to change. But I think the short answer is a person has to be willing to fully surrender everything. This coming weekend and Easter, Brandon's talking about the redemptive power. You're going to hear a testimony of a person whose life has totally transformed. And it's because of the willingness to surrender. You look at what Paul says, I think in Philippians, that I count everything that I've gained as loss. Paul was a rich guy. He was a successful guy. He earned a lot of stuff. This was stuff that he deserved to have. But in the end, he says, that's garbage. In fact, the words he uses in the Bible, it's garbage, it's loss. Because there's only one thing that I pursue, and that is Christ Jesus. That's all that I want to know. That's transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a total surrender. But if we're
Yeah.
continually wanting to hold on to the things that we want to hold on to, it's going to be hard. It's going to be a long road.
So, I mean, I know that you worked basically your entire life in order to get up to being a judge. I mean, law school, internships, other things that judges and lawyers do that I don't know because I'm not a judge or a lawyer. Like super long hours. How was that like process of like praying through, okay, I'm going to give up what I worked so hard for you?
Yeah, that's, for me, it's almost an out of body experience.
Really?
When I hear myself tell the story, or I see it on video, giving a testimony, I look at that and I go, wait, are you crazy? How could you do something like that? Who would do that?
Yeah.
It's really what I see. Who would do something like that? When I think back on those days, first of all, is because of the transformation that I felt within me. That because of who I was before my moment of salvation, to know that there was a God who just loved me despite all of that he was the only one that I believe could forgive me for the things that I've done. That, man, how then can I live? How then should I live my life? That's why Paul's testimony hit me a lot. And I've talked about this before when I was in Las Vegas in the hotel room, just reading the story of Paul and the account of what happened to him.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember literally in my heart saying, God, if you can use him, can you use me? Because a lot of it was a parallel, with Paul's life. So it was that. And then after a while, just reading, and the Bible just began to say to me, trust me. He never gave me a position. He never gave me a future. He never said, well, this is what you'll be, if you do these things. Every devotional was trust me, trust me, trust me. And I would wonder, trust, what do you mean trust? Trust me, trust me, trust me. And then you look at how my life kind of evolved, even getting into ministry. Then I get sick with leukemia, and then that whole testimony I have about being in the hospital. And the Lord again said, trust me. I want you to learn pure trust. So it's like maybe my epitaph on my headstone should say, he trusted God, because it's all about trust. How do you develop that? It's time after time after time, moment after moment, reading in his word. And in the end, you surrender everything you have, and you say, that's the only way I'm going to live. I got to trust you.
So did you take like little steps? Because I know that, I mean, I don't know like your entire story front to back. I just know pieces that you've shared with me and with the church and on this podcast and stuff. But like, I know that you started like serving with setting up the tent at 1 a.m, and then like helping out with praying and preaching, and then like eventually starting Metro and like doing all these crazy things, like running for lieutenant governor, and just the trust that you have, where there are even sometimes in like staff meetings where you're like, just like, oh, I feel like God is calling us to do this. And it's this crazy thing. And you're just like, so we're going to do it. It's just like, what? We're going to do that? What were there like small steps that you took? Was there just like, was it incremental? Was it you just like fully sent and just jumped into it? What was that like?
Again, it's not transactional. I don't think trust you develop in a transactional sense. A plus B equals C.
Interesting.
If I do steps 1, 2, 3, that'll increase my trust. I think trust is, and as you're talking, the image in my mind was like of a jigsaw puzzle. I gave a message once on connecting the dots,
Mm-hmm.
and I have yet to, write this book, but that would be my next book. How do you connect the dots? So the picture where you connect dots and then it comes out,
Mm-hmm.
you never see it. But the image I saw as you were talking is this jigsaw puzzle. You have a piece and it's important, but you don't know where it goes yet.
Mm-hmm.
And you can make out just faintly what it is a part of. But then when you connect it to another piece, and then you connect another piece, so okay, now it's beginning to make sense. But it's not until you connect all the pieces, not in a 1, 2, 3 fashion. Yeah, if you've done jigsaw puzzle, this one goes here. Oh, this one goes over here. No, this one goes over here. And then as the pieces begin to take shape, and then you become like, the age that I am, even though I don't have any gray hair, you can look at the whole picture and go, oh, so that's why I did that. That's why I went through that. At that time, it didn't seem like it fit. It didn't seem like it was the right, move to make. But I tried it. And sometimes it didn't fit. But then I try someplace else or try something else. But I think that's the trust factor. It's not transactional. It's looking at knowing that God, the creator, already made this masterpiece. He's already made this, right? For your life, for my life, he already has that jigsaw puzzle completed. And he will stay with you until the very end, until every piece is in place. And you just got to trust that piece does have a place. But it's not meeting my expectation, but it does have a place. You're part of a much greater plan, I think is what I said. You're part of a much grander plan. And yeah.
So what advice would you have for someone like who's maybe young, got their whole life ahead of them, not even hit their peak yet? I don't know who I'm talking about, but someone who's young who like is dealing with those like jigsaw pieces where they're like, I don't know where this goes. I don't know how this fits into God's plan for me. They're just like not lost, but just like they don't have the look back, the hindsight to say, oh, okay, I see where that situation was leading me, or I see what I was supposed to learn out of that situation. But the people who are in those situations now and they're trying to figure things out, what advice would you have for people like that?
Start with the piece, and let's just stay with the jigsaw puzzle metaphor. Start with the piece that's in your hand right now, and just be obedient to whatever that piece is. I think of, and jigsaw puzzles come in all different shapes and sizes, right? When you're in, you go to, the preschool, and they probably have a jigsaw puzzle with 4 pieces.
Yeah, and they're all
just
this
4
big.
pieces. Yeah, and it's like, okay, that fits. Great, did it. Okay, so what are you going to do? You're going to stay with 4 pieces when you're 30 years old? No, every you want to move up. You want to kind of challenge yourself in a way. Go to the 10-piece jigsaw puzzle. Go to the 50-piece jigsaw puzzle. Go to the 500-piece jigsaw puzzle. But I would say, don't be afraid to level up and try the next step. And try the next step. And even if you get, frustrated and confused, we did one when the pandemic first started. We laid out. I had this jigsaw puzzle in a box, and we never opened it. But we started to piece things together, and then Joy really dove into that, and she did a lot. But we would come over every once in a while and go, oh, maybe that fits over here, and so don't be afraid to get with others around you too, and say, hey, what I'm trying to do is, and I'm looking at, what do you think? My journey wasn't just my own reflection and decisions. I had guys around me. I had brothers around me, until, as the pieces began to fall in place. I remember this one guy telling me, and I can visually see where I was standing in my judge's chamber, looking out the window. I'm on the phone, and this guy says to me, Elwin, it's like everything you do seems to turn to gold, is what he said. Everything I touch turns into gold. He said, what are you waiting for? As far as the decision, do I leave the bench or not? He says, what are you waiting for? The pot of gold at the end of the rainbow? You already have it. And I went, oh, wow, that was big. That's a big deal for me. In other words, I could have stayed as a judge. God wouldn't take his hand off of me, but I would miss what he had available and waiting for me. Mm-hmm. So either way, God doesn't say, okay, because you didn't do that, you're like Moses. Because you didn't do that, okay, you cannot enter the promised land. But God never gave up on Moses. Mm-hmm. And so even for, your own life, a person who's young, trying to learn how to trust, don't fear that if I don't do this, I blew it. Try it. Try that piece. Try another piece. Keep going. And God says, I'll be with you. I'll be with you to the end of the age.
Yeah. So. I really like that idea of the having people around you that you can bounce ideas off of, because sometimes we can get so caught up in like, this is my only option. And then we talk to someone and we realize, that person says like, oh, wait, have you thought about this? And it's like, whoa, that blows the whole problem wide open. Like there's other things that I can't see because I'm like so flustered or I'm too close to the problem. So having those kinds of people and being those kinds of people who are going to be able to, who are wanting to get into other people's lives, not in a respectful, like Jesus-centered way, but be able to like call each other out in biblical ways where it's like, hey, I see that this is going on in your life. Like you have this opportunity that God is putting in front of you, and like encourage them to do it. And a lot of that can be done in connect groups. So Metro has great connect groups. You can head over to our website. There's a connect group finder. We've talked about it a few times, but it's really cool. And get into those groups where you can have those people to talk about what's going on in your life. They can encourage you to trust, and you can encourage them to trust God.
Yeah. Let's start with the puzzle that's right in front of you. Mm-hmm. And so if I just use you as an example, Willie, the puzzle that God has you trying to figure out is, Metro Kids and the next gen, and start with that. At the same time, though, know that that's part of a much larger piece, much larger puzzle. Mm-hmm. So as you're doing that, so it's almost like you have to have both and eyes. I'm doing this, but it's also part of a larger thing. And so that's why this is so important and critical, because it is part of something much bigger, So, a person's life too, younger life, where they're working, whatever they're doing, it's doing it, but also knowing that God is going to use that somehow in a bigger picture, in a bigger sense.
Mm-hmm. I like to think of all the stories where it's in the Bible where it talks about like, if you can be trusted with little, then you can be trusted with much. Yep. And I kind of try to have that mindset when I'm going into something, like even if it seems kind of insignificant, where if it's worth doing, it's worth doing right. And so like, okay, this is what God is putting in front of me right now. So I'm going to do the best that I can, because I know that down the road, it's going to play into a bigger picture.
Yeah. And that's why, I give the example of running for lieutenant governor. It wasn't a political thing. It was all this spiritual covering and all that. So, okay, it's supposed to be done, man. I will be done. It's going to be done. And it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Well, what did I do? Did I crawl into my hole? Did I say, forget it then? I'm not going to pray anymore. Because if I pray, it's not going to happen. No, it quickly launched into something else. And this politician friend that I have, he says, what I really admire about what happened to you is that you didn't crawl into a hole of defeat. You came right out and you guys launched into something else. I said, yeah, because I believe that it's all part of a greater plan. So, yeah.
Yeah. And you even were able to just turn that around and like, just, okay. Like that didn't work out, but I know that there's a bigger picture. And like, this was part of that bigger picture. Yep. So you didn't let it defeat you.
Yep.
Yeah. So I thought that was really cool. We were in Metro Kids Online this past Sunday, and one of the kids said, I learned today that Pastor Elwin ran for lieutenant governor, but then he didn't win. But then it was okay because they were partying because Jesus is good. And I was like, hey, right on. He's watching service.
Wow, yeah. That's awesome. That's good. That's good.
Yeah. So even with the Metro kids, they're learning from the big picture of your life.
Yeah, well, that's good to know.
Yeah, that was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, Pastor Elwin, man, this has been just such a great conversation, and very encouraging because it can feel like we're so stuck on one problem, especially with the younger generation, younger people. I feel like, man, if like I'm so stuck on this one problem that how am I ever gonna like progress? How am I ever gonna move forward? Or how is God gonna use this? But to be able to see an example of someone who's lived their life trusting God and like be able to pull on those examples and even show, be able to be vulnerable and be like, hey, this is a time where I put a lot of effort into something and it didn't end up working out. But I know that it played into a bigger picture that God was working. Like that's super encouraging for me.
Yeah, you have to think big picture, do what you got to do, but think big picture. I'm working on the synopsis for the next series, and it's in response to our in-person service. I did this I asked them to fill out a survey of, top 3 questions that you have for God, like dear God, what about? And so I took that and I compiled it, and I got some that we'll be talking about. And here's one I think just to tease the audience, whoever's listening. We're actually going to do one on dear God, what about aliens? Are there really aliens?
What about aliens?
It is an intriguing question. It's not something you just brush off. And I was reading about that, and I say that because what we'll see is that the question just brings to light how important we are to God. That God has us in a much bigger picture.
With aliens, when we go to Mars.
Well, it makes you consider what's going on in the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Because there's a Hubble telescope photograph, the largest captured photograph of the universe. And you can just Google it, Hubble telescope, largest universe picture. And just billions of, and they're galaxies, not just planets, or billions of galaxies, which is made up of stars and planets and billions. And God created all that. And he created you and me to be a part of all that. Now, how important is that?
Yeah.
So you got to think big picture. You got to see yourself in the bigger picture of what God is doing. And
that's going to be really cool. I'm really looking forward to that.
It's going to be a fun one. Yeah. Yeah. I'm looking forward to that. Yeah.
Well, Pastor Owen, this has been an incredible, just so thankful for this time that we get to sit down and talk together. Some of the stuff that we're coming up for Metro is Easter is this Sunday. Hey, if you haven't registered for Good Friday yet, you can do so on our website. In-person worship and prayer night. That's this Friday at 6 p.m. Service starts. And then Easter is Sunday, 8 and 10. More info on our website, but we have a ton coming up. Like Metro Kids is back. We're going to be at Easter, 8 and 10. And then after Easter, we're going to be at the 8 a.m. service for in-person Metro Kids. And then we're also going to be having online Metro Kids at 9. Alive is moving to twice a month. Next service is April 9th. Women's ministry is having their Elijah Bible study. And for information on any of that, you can go to our website. Our website has everything that you need to stay connected here at Metro. And then also there is a live stream event coming up where we're just going to be able to ask questions and hang out with Pastor Brandon and Pastor Owen. It's April 18th at 5 p.m. So that's going to be really cool just to meet and get to know some of the online Ohana that we haven't been able to have real conversations with. So it's going to be less structured, more just hang out, talk story kind. So that's going to be really fun.
What about baptism, Willie? How are we going to handle baptism if anybody wants to be baptized?
Ooh, we just had a real good long discussion about that, and we're really excited. But if you want to be baptized, if you feel like God is calling you towards being baptized, taking that next step with your faith, go ahead and email Cameron at metrochristianchurch.com, and he will get all of the information to you and set you up. But yeah, so we've got some really exciting things coming up.
Awesome. Good. Good.
A lot happening, a lot going on.
Yes, sir.
So we're excited. Hey, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast. We'll see you at Easter, Good Friday, and next week on the Hana podcast.
Yeah.
All right, everybody.
See ya.
Shoots.